Hello. We were, discussing regarding Romanticism and French Revolution. Um, so you already have got a little bit of idea of what Romanticism is, and how it was influenced by things like French Revolution, Enlightenment, and other things which are present during the time. Before we proceed, it is very important for us to know what romanticism is. And one of the important things to understand here is something called as romantic subjectivity. So, romantic subjectivity is, it doesn't mean what is the subject of romanticism. It actually means, it is subjective, right? So we have objectivity and subjectivity. So objectivity is looking at things as they are, and subjectivity is about, how things feel, right? So, an objective understanding is, I try to actually understand the facts. I try to understand, you know, the data which is present regarding a subject. So that is an objective understanding. Subjective understanding is, it might be influenced by other forms, and it might be personal, and so I would look at it in this particular manner. So that's a subjective understanding. So romanticism was majorly influenced by this subjectivity, and it's one of the key concepts of the romantic movement. It's that the term romantic subjectivity became very important, and it is much more important when it comes to art than that is, poetry and other forms of literature than any other avenues which are present during the time. And the concept is, it is majorly dependent on how an individual experience, right? So, if you read any of the romantic poems, you understand that, the poems are emotional. Poems are, you know, partially personal. Poems are very subjective in nature. It is about how one would view the world, right? For example, if you take, Westminster Bridge, so the description is not about the nature of the towers or the nature of the field. It is about how an individual feels when they encounter such scenes. So that is what we consider as subjectivity. So romanticism largely depended on this subjective experience, as we say, rather than the factual evidence, there are different ways to look at the world, and one of the ways is to rely only on the hard truth, hard facts. But so that is other way is the way of transcendence, like how you feel, how you, how beyond the physical observations, there is something else. So that subjectivity is what is being dealt here. And here, the personal experience of an individual and the emotions and feelings become very important. So, as you understand that, so one of the major themes of romanticism is nature and beauty, right? So, nature and beauty. So, this is one of the very important things. So, it is not about, how many trees are present. It is not about, what kind of animals live in a forest. It is about how an individual feels when they encounter the forest, or when they encounter animals. Take the poem Tiger, for example. So the tiger poem is not the description of the features of tiger, right? So it is about how one would remember something else. So if the person is awestruck, the person is, of course, a little bit scared, but much more is like, if this is tiger, what would be the person who has created the tiger? So that feeling which is present in the poem, is very personal emotion. It is not something which is verifiable. It is not something which can be falsifiable. It is not something which can be proved as a fact. It is purely something which a person's feeling presented in a particular manner. So that is what you actually see in you know romantic poems. And there is a certain sense of awareness in romantic writings. So that is, take example of Wordsworth. When he speaks about nature, you would see that, okay, so why am I not an interesting person? I'm not an interesting person because I have not aligned myself with nature. So this sense is present in, Wordsworth poems quite a lot, and so that is what we see, and so that is why we can consider that the romantic poets to a large extent were self-awareness. So this goes same for poems like "To a Skylark," for example, or "Ode on a Grecian Urn." So everywhere, from different poets, if you look at it, so every one of them, there is a sense of self-awareness. There is a sense of introspection which you find in these works. And another thing which you can find in romantic subjectivity is the concept of personal identity. So I mean, so there is a question. So, I mean, when you learn about modernism, you understand this. So, modernists considered poem as, a battle between, battle within oneself. So, this battle is between romanticism and the reality. So, that is how they considered poetry to be. So, why not things before romanticism, right? So that question, may arise. So that is majorly because the personal identity was, and the personal feelings were majorly dealt in romanticism more than anything else, right? So a person is in conflict within oneself, right? The person, is thinking of what their identity is. So so the inner conflict, what do you mean by the inner conflict here is, so if you see the poem, the world is too much with us, right? I would rather be a pagan suckled in the creed outward than, being stuck in the world of earning and spending. So, so there you have two identity. One identity is getting involved in earning and spending. We lay waste our past. So that is one identity which is present. The mechanical, the, I mean, industrialized, uh, life which is presented in front of us. That is one identity, and the other identity which is present here is that of a devotion, that of, an appreciation for beauty. So so that is, inner conflict which is present in the poem. The world is too much with us. So all these poems of the era are, almost all of them at least, so has a certain degree of inner conflict or the things which deals with personal identity. So that is one of the major features of romantic subjectivity. Then, so there is also a sense of melancholy in many of the poems. That is also one of the feature that, there are abundant examples for it. Then, one of the other things which are important when it comes to the manner in which the writings are presented. So that is, imagination and creativity, of course, become very important. For this, let me remind the definition of poetry by, Wordsworth. Poetry is a spontaneous overflow of, powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. So when he said that, this is what he meant. Like, so one part is, I mean, of course, it is not reality as it is, right? So it is recollected later. So, so when the powerful feelings are present in a person, when they are recollected later, so one needs to add, things for that to make a feeling. So that is where imagination and creativity comes into the picture. And of course the next feature is something which everybody would have guessed, that is romantic subjectivity is majorly related to nature and the sublimity. So and so that is nothing but of course the major focus is on nature and the kind of beauty which is present in nature, uh, but not just in a way that okay, this looks good or something of that sort. So there is a sense of sublimity, like so I wandered lonely as a cloud, right? So it is not like just looking at the clouds, oh how beautiful clouds are, or how beautiful these plants and flowers are. So there is a sense of elevation which is present, and that is what we call as sublimity. And the last thing which I would like to discuss regarding the romantic subjectivity is it is away from the convention, right? So the convention of the time was purely metrical, and which had its own restrictions, and so it was much more confined to certain structure. So, but romantic movement, which gave option to explore the things outside the confinement which was present during the time, and the free verse became very popular form of writing poetry. So this is an indication that there was a new form. I mean, we can't uh, say it's a new form as such, because free verse was present before, but so they started going away from the norms which are present during the time. So that is another feature of romantic subjectivities, and these are the major things which you can discuss regarding the the subjectivity of this particular moment. Thank you.